Yeah, on.
Two twins. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if only our listeners could see what is happening on the screen. We call it gyrations.
It's my prerogative. I can do what I want to do.
You were doing the my prerogative dance.
It's my. Remember when he does my? And that used to scare me when I was, 10 years old, whatever, when he would do that humping thing. But I think I just did it pretty well, I should say.
It would scare you.
Yeah. Do you remember? It was like there was a machine in his pants.
Yeah, well, indeed, but I don't think I was ever frightened by it.
It was inhuman.
It's really quite frightening. Armadillos in our trousers.
Yeah. I'm a little frightened that you weren't frightened by it. Did you?
No, I was not frightened by it.
Just let's level set. Did you enjoy it a little bit? Maybe just a little bit.
Maybe.
Bobby. If no one knows what the Hades we're talking about, it's the My Prerogative video by Bobby Brown back in the 80s or 90s. May have been right on the cusp.
I think it would have been late 80s.
Yeah, and he does this thing.
Pre-Vanilla Ice, I think.
He does this gyration at the end, and I was just replicating that for Nubs during the intro song. Hey, sorry, I made you wait a few extra minutes because I'll be honest, I was having what was a very unsatisfactory defecation. Evacuation. Now, which reminded me as I was going through the process. Have we talked about the bidet thing yet? Either on the podcast or just just in life?
I mean, we've definitely talked about it in life.
Okay, Nubs is eating, by the way, in case there's choppiness to his cadence.
Your little excursion gave me a chance to cut up some beautiful citrus.
Well, there you go. Nubs is eating grapefruit. Are you on a diet, buddy?
Citrus. No. It reminded me of one of my favorite Mitch Hedberg jokes. I can't remember the line, but he uses the word citrus and he says it with his trademark citrus.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. It's something about citrus.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm enjoying some delightful citrus. Anyway, go ahead. What do you want to talk about? Bidets?
Yeah. So, okay. Here's where I'm going. So there's two life things that I've tried like heck to get Nubs to adopt. The one I've been trying for the last 3 years is the CPAP, because I have sleep apnea. Nubs clearly has sleep. All you got to do is sleep within a mile of him and you realize he has sleep apnea. And I'm trying really hard, Ringo, to get him to. I even have a doctor. My sleep doctor is my neighbor. I'm trying every angle I can to get him, because number one, I think he'll sleep better. Number two, I think he'll live longer. And number three, I think it'll be better for his entire household. Right. So that's the first thing. My next mission is the bidet. I got to get shit. This thing is freaking unbelievable, Nub. I mean, even on an unsatisfactory situation, it can really save the day and take a 6.5 experience and upgrade it to like a 9. So hopefully we'll have a good update in the future on these two. These are my Nubs initiatives for, I would call it 2025 and perhaps beyond.
We have 2 bidets in our house.
Okay.
So
you're in.
Yeah, of course.
And do you match my thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that neither of them are mine. I will say that.
Oh, Nubs just took a bite.
His grapefruit is so good. If grapefruit was just easier to prepare, it would be.
Why didn't you eat the grapefruit while I was evacuating? I mean,
I was waiting for you.
No, you weren't. I was. You weren't on the screen.
I was. No, I wasn't on the screen because I was cutting up a grapefruit.
See, this is what happens when you do an episode every 6 months. We're going to spend the first half hour of it in conflict. You know,
I eat most shows.
It's true. It's actually true.
I really do believe that if the grapefruit was easier to prepare, I would maybe eat one every day. But it's very difficult. You have to cut it up and everything.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on the bidet, so I don't need to push the bidet.
What I was saying was, I don't have one in my room. So I do have to travel to another room, whether it be kids or wife, to use it, which does make it not as routine for me as probably it is for you, assuming that yours is in your room or close to it.
But yeah, I mean, I'm an everyday player.
Yeah. I just need to travel a little bit to get to it, but it is wonderful.
You need to travel within your house a little.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
Yes,
I'm sure that's a hike.
It's not a hike. It's just that sometimes I forget. Early in the morning because my routine is morning.
Yeah, samesies. Yeah. All right. Well,
I was trying to do my best boy band. Yeah. Right. Do you realize before you listen to boy band albums how much they just use the word uncontrollably? Yeah.
Lots of just lots of just like affirmative, enthusiastic noises, inaudible sounds. Right.
Yeah, and inaudible too. A lot of and
right.
Yeah,
that's all part of it.
It is. We're going to look at everything that's part of it. It's interesting.
And as we learned from a year and a half in the life of Metallica Nub, which we've talked about in the podcast, it's not above any producer, including Bob Rock himself, to tell the artist to insert some kind of exclamatory. Remember when he tells James Hetfield to do a woman and then a fire woman?
Child.
Yeah. Just, I don't think they kept any of it, but that's if Metallica dropped a couple of those in there during the sessions, imagine how many grunts and yas and squeals and things are dropped into a session of one of these groups.
Definitely. Well, when you have 85 producers working an album, you're going to get a lot of ideas. But listening to this and preparing the little that we do for this reminded me of that transition into the new millennium, which it's not very new anymore, but it was to you and I, between 1999 and 2000. What a interesting, weird, frustrating time that was in all sorts of ways. Before 2020 came along and we lived through that silly virus thing, Y2K was the thing, right? It was the thing that instilled fear in all of us. What's going to happen when all the clocks shift to the year 2000 and blah, blah, blah. So it's just kind of a strange time. But musically, I thought about there must have been this race to be the artist or the sound or the songwriter or the band who was going to define the new millennium. There must have been literally an arms race to just be the one who was going to name your album Millennium or sing songs about the millennium. And so it is fitting in a way that Backstreet Boys were the ones to sort of christen their album as Millennium. But it was a time where everybody was sort of fixated on this newness. Pre 9/11, post, Clinton, this whole idea of everything's going to be new and everything's going to be into the future and blah, blah, blah. And so how do you reflect on music as we transition from 99 into 2000? Because it was a really weird time.
Super weird time. Post also Woodstock 99. And there was a backlash on heavy music and metal. I mean, the new metal thing seemed to be starting to level off a little, and not that it didn't live on okay, but it was this strange interlude. You were certainly post grunge, and you were almost post everything to do with angst. It was a time where some of the intensity around music and performance and all this had kind of gone, just like we do with everything in our culture. It had gone a little bit too far. And I think people were just looking for some softness and some feel good stuff. And the boy band piece had certainly already started. And there have always been boy bands. This is not a new, everyone thinks of this as some kind of like 90s, early 2000s phenomenon. It's not. There've always been boy groups. There always will be. But just the timing was perfect because, number one, you had two really good acts. I mean, you've seen kind of how things have shaken out for, both Backstreet Boys and NSYNC in terms of longevity and in terms of solo careers and some of the stuff. And they were just really, really good acts that were put together perfectly and got, obviously, to your point about producers and songwriting think tanks. I mean, it was a time where all these things became really, really hot. So yeah, I think everything's set up perfectly for this to kind of ease itself into pop culture. And it wasn't just teeny bopper girls. It was everybody, everybody, whether they wanted to admit it or not, liked some of these songs and understood and recognized this whole scene as something that was pretty powerful at the time. And yeah, it's a new thing for us. Yeah, it'll be interesting to assess. Did you catch any Toast Top Fives while we were on our little break?
Yeah, I just listened to REM one today. I was appalled at your number one choice.
I was just gonna. So the reason I'm asking is, did you have any vigorous disagreements with any of the selections or any of the? We did. Let's see, REM, Dave Matthews Band, Goo Goo Dolls, Celine Dion, Maroon 5. That was the latest run. Any big disagreements there? Like, were there any song selections and you were just like, oh no, or hey, that's a good call. I mean, give me some of your feedback.
Well, like I said on the REM episode, which was the most recent one, the number one song, I remember you said it's off Monster, and I was like, cool, what's the frequency kind of? And then I was like, don't make it that dreadful song that just has the melody-less guitar. And because I remember the song of the show too, and I was like, what the hell is this song? And it was your number one. I was like, whoa, that's an interesting choice.
You didn't think that was cool at the show?
No, I thought it was weird. It was like, talk about scary. You're scared by Bobby Brown's gyrations. I was like, why did everything go dark? And why is Mike Mills playing guitar? And why is Michael Stipe singing these, this strange song? I don't know. I didn't get it, but I know that song meant a lot to you.
What about Celine Dion?
It was a good choice, but it was missing. I think you referenced that it was a Meatloaf song, so you didn't put it. It's All Coming Back to Me Now. Is that not on it?
No.
Yeah, that was kind of a miss.
That's a mess in your view?
Yeah.
Now is that a Dave Foster song?
It's a Jim Steinman song.
Oh, that's a Jim. Oh, yeah. That's right. Well, okay. I'm glad you checked in a little bit, and it's good to be back with you today. Let's try to close the gap on new episodes here, because it's been a bit, but it's good to be with you again, buddy.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Really good to be back with you here again. So let's go back to 1999. The top 10 albums. Dig this. This episode's album, Millennium, was number one, which we'll get to. Here's who else was on the top 10 list: Britney Spears, Ricky Martin, Christina Aguilera, and Dido. Okay. So those artists were all part of the top 10 selling albums of 1999. Here's who else is on the list: Celine Dion, second reference on the podcast, Santana, Blink 182.
Was that Santana one where he had all the special guests?
Well, all of his albums do, but this was the one with the Rob Thomas.
Yeah, the Rob Thomas. Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers and Creed. So we use the word weird to describe this year and this entrance into the millennium in music. Look no further than that top 10 to see why. And you basically got 5 super young, teenage market driven albums that all sold just unbelievable amounts of copies in the CD age. And then you've got like an aging, Latin guitarist. You've got a punk band. You've got veteran presence like the Chili Peppers with Californication, which was sort of its own strange hit machine. And then you've got Creed just out of nowhere, like a hard rock band. So that right there just sort of shows you how weird of an entrance it was to this new Millennium, which of course is the Backstreet Boys album we'll be looking at. So speaking of albums, let's tune into what you've been listening to of late as we take the show round and round. See 3 albums that you have been enjoying of late. Lay it on us.
There's a new album from a band called the Wombats, who are out of Australia, a little festival rocky, but good, and haven't listened to it yet. It's called Oh, the Ocean. Like oh, exclamation point, the ocean. So there you go. I've been getting into some weather report stuff.
Ooh,
and
nice.
So 8:30 is
great
on there.
album.
Yeah, really good. I mean, you get a little older, a little more refined, and you start to appreciate something that you probably would have made fun of 20 years ago. But God, the musicianship and it's insane. And lastly, our pal Jason Beeler of Saigon Kick. We talked about going on the show in Chicago. Hopefully we've been talking with him about coming on to the show. Hopefully someday we can make that happen. And his Baron von Bielski Orchestra has a brand new album out called The Escapologist. Pretty good. Not quite up to the previous 2 or his owl stretching work, in my opinion, but it's always good to get something from Mr. Beeler, who hopefully will take a lap at some point, whether it's Saigon Kick or whether it's by himself, and we can go experience that again. So that is what is round and round for me. How about you, buddy?
That Saigon Kick show was amazing. God, I'm so glad we went to that.
So good.
They only ended up doing a couple in the end for that water anniversary. So that was really, really cool. All right. Well, first for me, a band that I'm going to go see next week. This is one of those, introduce the world to it, and everyone will find out eventually. There's a band called Hold Fast. It's 3 brothers who are in a band together. They make really good, kind of heavy pop music. Really, really exciting new band. Like, these guys will be big. I can almost guarantee it. And it's cool that they're brothers, and it's cool that they make a very catchy yet powerful form of pop and rock music. So check out Hold Fast. And they're one of those bands that they put a period at the end of their band name, and it has to have the period, right? Because it's in style. So there you go. So Hold Fast. And their most recent full-length album is Movies, which I recommend checking out. 311 came back with an album called Full Bloom that I think is quite good. Winter is not really the time for 311 for me, but it's been cool to get into it and listen to it. I think it's one of the best records they've made in a while. And then our old friends and one of my album of the year choices from a couple of years back, the band Frost, with a new prog double album, Life in the Wires. That is just a pretty amazing ride. So that is what is round and round for me, T. T, are you ready to enter the new millennium again? 25 years later.
This will be interesting.
So let's learn more about that as we look into Backstreet Boys Millennium with the Nerdy Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
You want some dirty deeds? Yeah. You want some dirty deeds?
Millennium was released on May 18th, 1999. So just a few months before the world was going to end, which of course it did not. It's the second album from Backstreet Boys released on Jive Records, which is a very instrumental label in this whole sort of, you say boy band, but really this sort of like teenage movement around this time. The album was the top selling album of 1999. It sold 24 million copies worldwide in 1 year, T. In the year 1999, it sold 11 million in the US alone. That's how anticipated this was. That's how huge it was. And remember, they weren't the only game in town because NSYNC came along and rivaled Backstreet Boys. And I think a little bit like the Oasis Blur thing, those two sort of pushed each other and they only made each other more popular and better. The list of producers is too long to list. It really is. But the two that stand out most is probably Max Martin, famous Swedish songwriter who contributed huge to this record in terms of songwriting production. I'm sure he served as sort of a composition mentor for the band. And it must be mentioned, even though he only produced one song, Robert John Mutt Lange had involvement on Millennium. But again, just on one song. For the most part, these boy band albums were all made by teams of songwriters, producers. It is important to note, though, that Backstreet Boys does have a songwriter as part of the members. And let's take a look at the members.
Really quick, can I give the third name check on Celine Dion of the episode?
Sure.
Max Martin, who I mentioned on the Toast Top 5 episode, because he wrote one of the songs in the top 5, which was That's the Way It Is. So we have actually mentioned old Max Martin before, and he's written a lot of pop hits for a lot of artists.
Who would have thought Celine would be such a big part of our day today? You know?
Yeah, right. We.
Exactly. Brian Luttrell is the true musician of Backstreet Boys. He even conducted the choir that sang on this album. He did a lot of the vocal arrangements and did contribute to the songwriting. He's really the main member who did. Kevin Richardson contributed to one of the songs, but Brian Luttrell, I think everybody would say, is sort of the musical kind of heart of the group and probably the one with the most overall musical talent. He was, of course, joined by Nick Carter, famous for being a Backstreet Boy, also famous for being tabloid fodder for sure. He and his brother both seemed to be in and out of tabloids and gossip columns and things like that. But Nick Carter was a member, of course. Kevin Richardson, Howie Dorough. I think Howie was like the scary one, if you will, with all the facial hair, I think. Is that right? And AJ McLean. Actually, maybe he was the one with the
No, Howie was the clean cut sort of, I think he's Puerto Rican.
Oh, okay.
AJ was the one.
AJ, the bad boy. Every boy band had the token bad boy, right? And I guess that was AJ McLean. So that was the group. Of course, like, long story made very short, this is a Lou Pearlman operation. Lou Pearlman, of course, the dude who sold planes to boy bands and then basically said, I want to be in this business. So he got in the music business and started holding tryouts and auditions for boy bands, making selections, sort of christening these members to join these groups, put them together, put them with producers, gave them great songs, marketed the absolute shit out of them, and made tons and tons and tons of money in the process. But he also had some falling outs, including Backstreet Boys. And that's part of the story of this album. They had a falling out with Lou Pearlman that added to some of the other things that were going on. Kevin Richardson had a couple deaths in his family. Brian Luttrell actually needed to get open heart surgery during the making of this album, at least during the process of it. He was born with like an enlarged heart, so they had to take care of that. Howie Dorough lost his sister, and the band's producer, one of them, died of stomach cancer. So like all this stuff was happening. Yet the band was preparing for clearly its biggest moment. And what would, in hindsight be not only the Backstreet Boys' biggest moment, but maybe the peak commercially of this sort of boy band movement was the year 2000 and into 2001. T, I guess my question for you is, did you buy Millennium? Did you own it?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course. I mean, we were in college. We'll get to it in the wonders. We were in college when this happened. So yeah.
We most certainly were. Excellent. Well, then let's do that, T. I want to hear your Backstreet Boys Wonder Story. So let's get into the Wonder Stories. T, what is your backstory for the Backstreet Boys?
Two main things. I mean, I'll go in reverse order. I went to their concert. And have you seen them live? I think you have, haven't you?
I went to NSYNC.
Right.
I never saw the Backstreet Boys.
Okay. So this would have been like 10 years ago. And I had a team at work of like a bunch of like mostly 20 something ladies. You know, we were doing public relations, and that, you know, that was kind of how most PR teams tended to sort of shake out, and they were great and fun. And we set out some goals for the year, some measured objectives in these type of corporate things, and decided that if we hit everything, which was actually very unlikely, but if we hit every single thing, that we would have like an outing, you know, like a go out and have some fun type outing. And we had kind of seen outward a few months in advance that summer that the Backstreet Boys were coming to Pine Knob probably in July or something. And so we set all these mid-year goals, and if we hit them, we were going to all go to the Backstreet Boys concert. And lo and behold, we did, and we went, and we conquered. And it was
Were you
great.
like deep down hoping that they didn't hit the KPIs?
I mean, you know, it was going to be fun. So, and look, it's a different experience. I'd never been to a boy band show, or like even a real poppy kind of concert like that. Like, but you know, this was also, I mean, they were already a kind of quote unquote old, right? This was already a little bit of a greatest hits type of thing. It's not like this was in, you know, their heyday. So it was cool. The people watching is amazing. Everyone's having a good time. And it was actually really fun. And they were great. They put on a hell of a show. I think they're still playing, right? So with the same exact lineup, I mean, these guys haven't like lost people or traded up for people. They're the same five that that you described even still today, which is kind of neat. So yeah, I mean, I like this group, and I never really liked NSYNC, but I always legitimately liked the Backstreet Boys. They've got a few songs outside of this album that are amazing, you know, Drowning and Shape of My Heart. I mean, these are like really great songs. So, you know, so I'm kind of partial to these guys. And it really started in college. I mean, that's when Millennium came out, and, you know, it was an interesting time for music, as we've talked about, where we were just listening to a lot of like, you know, sort of pump up music to like go out and, you know, cause trouble and whatever. And so this became one of the albums that we would actually, I was in a fraternity, so you can imagine, probably kind of funny if you had a hidden camera, but you know, we'd listen to this when we were like getting primed up and ready to go out, you know, we'd listen to Millennium. So very fond memories of this record. I had a roommate. I think I told you the story or said it on here about the roommate I had who was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. And I was like, what are you watching? And he's like, oh, it's this movie no one's ever heard of called Office Space. You got to watch it. That same kid was a super big, unapologetic Backstreet Boys fan. And so we spent a lot of time listening to this album, preceding many good times. And yeah, it was kind of a fun time for that. So yes, I'm a Backstreet Boys fan. I celebrate the catalog. And, you know, if I'm trying to think of if there are any other boy bandy type groups that I like in addition to these guys. I mean,
Maroon 5.
Yeah, right. I mean, I guess the Jackson 5, they were technically a boy band, right? Who else? Who are the other good, like legit good boy bands? I mean, New Kids on the Block had some great stuff, right? I think we can all agree to that. You know, some Boys to Men I could get down with, right? I mean, the Beatles were a boy band. They were pretty good.
Yeah,
right?
They pretty much were. Yeah.
I mean, essentially, right, for the first several years. So I don't know. I guess I would venture to say that maybe the Backstreet Boys are my favorite boy band in history. I don't know. What about Take That?
Right. Take that. Yeah. The British version.
Robbie Williams.
By the way, going to see him this summer in Amsterdam.
Ooh, fun.
I can't wait. Yeah, that's going to be really cool.
I mean, the Monkees were great, you know?
Yeah, were they boy? Yeah, I guess boy band, TV band.
Menudo, you know?
Oh, now we're reaching deep.
New Edition was good.
New Edition. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah.
And what about Crisscross?
Boy band,
You know?
or just duo?
Well, let's debate it. I would say, age, pop sensibility, style. I think Crisscross is a boy band. We should have done a game, boy band or no boy band. I don't know. We were just talking about Crisscross.
No. We rap group.
Yeah, that's a good
They
call.
define this in their
Yeah.
intro.
Well,
We
there's
rap
two.
group.
There's two members. There's the Mac Daddy, right? And then he's joined by the Daddy Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember their intro to their album?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, they're doing a press conference. I
They
think.
are, and someone calls them like a boy band, and they're like, no, we rap group.
Oh, well, that clears it up.
So
Well,
it's cleared up.
yeah.
They told the media.
Hanson, right? I mean, they're good.
It's a boy band.
Yeah. So, but I guess even if you stack the competition, I would say that Backstreet Boys are my favorite, and in my humble opinion, the best boy band. So anyway, that's my wondrous story. What do you got over there, New Blaze?
We kind of covered it. I mean, this whole thing just came like a storm, very confusing to a rock and roll kid who, by 1999, I was sort of, eventually very quickly going to hear about Slipknot, and, all the hard rock bands that I liked were still very relevant. So it was confusing and weird, but the songs were pretty catchy, and you would hear them all over campus. I mean, that's what I remember the most, is just hearing this music all over the dorm room, and it was just sort of blasting out of rooms for sure. And I do remember the monumental sort of release of this album. These were all standards of pop culture during this year. I mean, they weren't just songs, they weren't just hits, they were played and blasted everywhere, to the point where you got pretty tired of them pretty quickly, but you also sort of appreciated
Speak for
how good they were.
yourself, young man. Speak for
Right.
yourself.
Right, exactly. So one thing that's really interesting about this album checks in at 46 minutes, which for the CD era is very short.
Yeah, it feels
Very
longer
short.
than that, doesn't it?
It does. Yes. It's 12 songs in 46 minutes. And it's meant to move quickly, but it does feel long, which I think is quite interesting. So let's drop that needle to you and explore Millennium.
When the drum beats go like this.
At its time, it was one of the most expensive music videos ever made. And the video is absolutely bonkers. But the song is probably my favorite by Backstreet Boys. And that is the opening, Larger Than Life. It's such a jam. It's like it's rare to find a boy band song that like actually has like power in it. And that's what really caught me when I first heard Larger Than Life. I thought it was heavy. I thought the riff that it's based around was really cool. And it was sort of like one of those like perfect songs. It's got great melody. The breakdown where everything opens up is kind of sweet. And the imagery associated with it probably does have something to do with it. The video is actually quite cool, even though it's completely ridiculous. $2.1 million they paid to make this video.
Good God.
But it is a dynamic opening track for Millennium, isn't it?
Well, listen, you were getting a good return on your investment back then for a $2.1 million video. I mean, think about how many albums that led to selling. So, it's insane, particularly in today's standards. But at this time, all of this was very visual, and it was important to present everything visually. It was as important to do that as it was to produce a great song. So, Yeah, not too surprising, and I'm sure they made that back in spades, but yeah, it is yet another signal of the time that you would spend that much money on a video. I think the song's okay. I just assume flip to the next one, but yeah, probably bottom half of the album tune for me, but prototypical boy band intro song that gets you off to a hot start. Bunch of hot guys getting you off to a hot start, right?
Bottom half of the album, larger than life.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Oh my, wow, that's a shocker so far.
Yeah.
Well, number 2 is one
It's
of
just
those,
like all you people. It's just kind of dumb. I think it's kind of dumb.
all right. Go to a karaoke bar.
Come on, all you people. You know what I mean? Come on.
Right, yeah, all you people, man. Come on, it's inclusive.
Yeah.
Go to a karaoke bar of any place in really any age of audience, and you will likely by the end of the night hear somebody probably butcher, but in a humorous way, track 2 on Millennium, and that is I Want It That Way. Maestro playing the big payoff. You work with more producers than you can count when you have sections like that just sort of perfectly sculpted, perfectly produced, perfectly executed.
Right.
This song was massive. And it's probably the song from the boy band era that has lived on the most, I might say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's kind of the anthem. I mean, even there were some huge songs from NSYNC, you know, when you look at like Bye 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 and It's Gonna Be Me and then that kind of stuff. But this one really preserved in a way that was kind of unique. We play it when we do our acoustic sets and it just kills every single time. Every time. So it's just beloved and yeah, it's rather perfect. It's almost too perfect in terms of you can tell that this song was probably focus grouped, you know, many times over, and that obviously there was some tremendous pop talent going into kind of the overall sound and atmosphere of how this was executed and produced. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of the ultimate boy band song, but it's actually very good, you know, so I think that's part of the reason why of all the tracks we're going to go through here, it has lived on. And I don't think it was just because of how it did on the charts. I think it's because it's a very good song. And that's just the bottom line.
I think 2T, I agree. It is just in its essence a good song, but I do think it captured the zeitgeist of the moment pretty well with its sort of dreaminess, right? Like even not to get like too like deep about the lyrics and stuff, but you think about like this entrance into a new millennium. And I want it that way. This whole idea of like yearning and like, you know, what one wants and wanting and yearning and needing. Like these were themes that I think resonated really well with these young audiences at this time. Because it was a time of like dreaming, right? Like we were all dreaming about what this new century was going to look like, what new technology and what new exciting opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And it just feels like the tone of the song, the kind of uplifting nature of it, did seem to capture the hearts and minds of people, which might explain why it's lasted longer than some of the other throwaway stuff that came and went.
It's funny. We've been doing this show for 5 years now, and I've never heard you talk about lyrics as much as you just did on the Backstreet Boys episode.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's worth mentioning. Also, just really quick on the visual piece, obviously the video of this is where they're like in the airplane hangar and all that. I mean, this was also very iconic. So I think that also was a big element as to why this popped the way it did and why it's kind of had the longevity is because of the visual nature of the video, which, I mean, you mentioned the 2.1 million on Larger Than Life. I guarantee you more people would recognize and remember this video way more so than the other one. And it probably costed less. I don't know. How much does it cost to rent out a airplane hangar? I don't know.
Well, there's three important letters that we have not cited yet in this episode that we must. And those letters are TRL. And that was such an important part of all of this. TRL, Total Request Live, as it started off, was MTV's sort of after school show. And Carson Daly hosted it. And that's where all of these artists got their break from a commercial standpoint. They would be guests on it, and their videos would play on there every day. I mean, literally, the I Want It That Way video probably played every day on TRL for, I don't know how many weeks,
no doubt about
100
it.
weeks.
And one other thing before we move on, Nub, I think you have to point out, back when he was funny, Howard Stern, I Want the Gay Way. I went the gay way. The parody of I Want It That Way was something rather extraordinary.
Back when Howard was funny and relevant.
I went the gay way. It was very funny.
It was. All right. Track 3 is one of those ones that didn't last, and you can sort of see why in hindsight. Might be the super long title. Show Me the Meaning of Being Lonely.
There's no control. Are you with me now? Your every wish will be done. Tell me. Show me the meaning of being lonely. Is this the feeling I need to?
You can hear the Max Martin songwriting production all over it.
How do you not sing along
just
to
boring.
this? I'm over here just
I'm like
belting this out. Impossible to listen to that and not maybe sway a little bit, sing, and perhaps maybe even cry.
You could cry. You could cry a little bit.
I see you're tearing up a little over there. Don't
out of boredom. I always found this song very dull.
Oh, I like this song.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is your favorite part when it does a tell me why I can't
Yeah, that's a nice hook. That's a nice hook. The whole chorus is good. So you hear the intro. It was always funny because you're like really riding high after the first two songs because they're all upbeat, and you get the intro to this, which is just a cappella. Show me the meaning, and you're like, ugh, like this is the bring it down track. But by the end, I'm always like, yeah, that's a good ass song. That's actually a good track. I like the track. I like it as the track 3. It's very good.
Man, we are poles apart when it comes to Backstreet Boys. I like this. All right, track 4. This gets into more of the deeper cuts. Beginning with, this is where Mutt Lange makes his appearance as writer and producer with It's Gotta Be You.
It's the way you make kinda get me go crazy. Don't wanna stop. It's gotta be you. It's gotta be you. Every day I promise you I will be true.
From like a music perspective, it is the quintessential boy band song. It's got the low synth that kind of is repetitive. You got these thick vocal harmonies on top. This thriving, danceable backbeat.
Cutting loose. They're really cutting loose, aren't they, buddy?
It's heavy, man. Millennium is heavy. Woo. You can hear the Mutt Lange. You can also hear this song different.
Where do you hear the Mutt Lange? I don't hear the Mutt Lange at all.
In the entire backbone of the song. For sure.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you could play this. You could have played this for me 100 times and I would have never guessed that Mutt Lange had anything to do with it. But, and remember, he was doing a lot of work at this time with the Coors. Remember the Coors in the late 90s? So, I mean, he was definitely getting into this. I mean, Mutt Lange probably could do whatever he wanted in terms of composition support and production support, obviously. But he was definitely dabbling around in the pop boy bandy type sound at this time. So he was definitely in the mix.
This song is, I'll always remember it because I started dating my now wife when she was in college, and I'd do these drives and visit her for weekends. And this song was like their get ready to go out song. So you'd be like, getting ready and drinking a beer or something. And just out of the room next to the one we were in, you would just hear this. And I'm just like, what is this?
Well, if Show Me the Meaning kind of brings you down a little bit, this one was definitely meant to give you a nice jolt.
Very good get ready song, apparently. And moving along to track 5. This one was written by Andrew Fromm. It's the only, it's one of the only songs on the album that was just written by one person. And that's Andrew Fromm. And it was the only one written by him. And that is track 5, I Need You Tonight.
What we have is so right this time, and I need you tonight. I need you right now.
You know, this is like concert bring it down moment, right? Like I'm sure they didn't have cell phones or lighters at the time. What did the kids flash during the slow songs? Probably just did the arm sway, I would guess, during this. But kind of a throwaway slow song, I would say. Not very impactful.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's kind of junk. I mean, that's the type of song that any songwriter worth a crap could, write, in their basement in 5 minutes. So the only moments I think where these songs get really bad is when they're not very well composed and they're solely reliant on production gimmicks.
Yes.
Because this is ear candy, man. Like the keyboards, the percussion, the beat, the backbeats, the 4 on the floor. It's all ear candy. This stuff was tested and focus grouped and massaged and glazed so many times over that, at some point you probably forgot that there was somebody that actually at one point sat down with a guitar or a piano and wrote the thing. So this is one of those songs I think that just is all production. And that's where the moments during this whole genre, but moments on this album get to be pretty bad and pretty outdated. And I think that's the case with I Need You Tonight.
Ear candy is a good word for it. And the next track is certainly that from a rhythmic perspective. This is one of those songs that I always imagine people awkwardly not knowing how to dance to it. It's very Max Martin and very unique rhythmically compared to the rest of the album and really the rest of the boy band sound. And that is Don't Want You Back. Boy band sound, part of the whole team sound in this era was a flirtation with hip hop, right? That was a big part of this was like, if we're going to try and capture the entire market of all listeners under the age of, 22, then it's got to have groove and it's got to have interesting hooks and twists. And therefore there is a certain synergy, I feel like, between a lot of the sounds from boy bands and hip hop music. This to me is one of those. This is one of those where like a hip hop fan might listen to it and be like, ooh, that's good. That's a good deep groove. Cause it's very unique. It's slow, but it's active. And if you heard an instrumental version of this, I think you'd be amazed at just all the little things that are going on rhythmically for sure.
Yeah. This song holds up pretty well because this is the sort of direction you saw like Maroon 5 and some of the others that followed this, which was not boy band, but continued in that poppy hooky direction. This was kind of the style that seemed to survive. So, and to your point, I mean, I think what you're seeing right now is a hodgepodge of, what you call festival rock is kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of hip hop elements, a lot of pop elements, a lot of electronica elements. So, a lot of what was happening here musically, believe it or not, actually was a little bit of a prelude to some of the stuff that's even popular and modern now. Because if you take the multi-layered voices out of this and you modernize some of the technology and elements of electronica, some of these beats and moves and approaches are still not only a thing, but are actually quite popular. So kind of interesting in that way. And I think that's part of why, this is an interesting selection and interesting to plow through is that musically there are still some things happening here that are very worth examining because some of this style and some of this approach has actually lived on. And I think that song kind of represents a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, musically the most challenging song on the album for sure. It always cracked me up that this music was all written from the male perspective and it was all about wanting and yearning and needing. Yet it was so popular with young females. So, what lessons are to be learned from that, young lads? Quite a few. It continues this diverse lyrical theme of wanting and needing and yearning with Don't Want to Lose You Now.
Wish that I didn't need you so bad. Your face just won't go away. Don't wanna lose you now. Baby, I know we can win this. Don't wanna lose you now.
It really is a great composition. It's sort of I Want It That Way Part 2. Similar feel, but it's very Max Martin. And maybe the should have been a hit on the album, I would say. But the only issue is there's like 3 other songs just like it. So which one do you pick?
Favorite song on the album, buddy? Easily. In fact, I'm
not surprised by that at all.
I was eyeing a top 5 on these guys, and Don't Want to Lose You Now would absolutely be in it, and maybe towards the top. I mentioned 2 other songs earlier: Drowning, Shape My Heart, This, and I Want It That Way is probably in there too. But yeah, this one easily would crack that as I think being one of their best songs. And yeah, it doesn't try to do too much. It's a really nice, kind of easy yet catchy and layered groove. The post middle section, so these middle sections are all, some of them hold up okay, some of them are just silly because they all break down, and then like the one featured boy in the group steps forward. I mean, it's all very orchestrated, but the way this one comes out of the middle section is actually outstanding in terms of the vocal progression, and the overall kind of movement of the song is really, really strong. Again, I think they eased up a little bit on the production elements to where the song could kind of breathe. So I think this was a very smart, very good composition, and yeah, best song on the album for me, buddy.
I think you make a great point. It's one of the more effortless feeling songs for something so, orchestrated, to your point. All right. I would say the other major hit, which is still surprising to me that this song was so huge, and that is track 8, The One.
To make it right, I am holding you all through the night. I'll be the one. I'll be the one who will make all your sorrows undone. I'll be the light. I'll be the light. When you feel like there's nowhere to run.
Up-tempo, danceable, so it does check some boxes. I never found this one compelling. The song just kind of came and went. Again, if I wanted something a little heavier, I might go with Larger Than Life, but this song was a huge, huge hit for them.
I love this one. I think this is a great back-to-back. In fact, I think it's the strongest part of the record, right in the middle. So yeah, I mean, this sort of pulsing, kind of syncopated synth piece that you get underneath, it drives along well. The vocals are great, I think it's Brian leading this show, which is usually the case. I mean, the guy has a freaking awesome voice, and gave kind of the perfect treatment to songs like this. But yeah, I completely understand why I actually am surprised this one wasn't like totally top tier, because it was probably second tier in terms of their hits and their singles. But Don't Want to Lose You Now into this makes for a really good middle of the record. Now, probably the high point. But, anytime you have one of these albums, they're going to start hot, but you want something in the middle that kind of keeps you going beyond just one song. And track 7 and track 8, here, both of those back to back here, I think makes for a really good middle of the record.
And it's a good thing because, and I agree with you, the end of this album, it is like they just put everything good in the first 3 quarters of it. And there's really nothing that notable. So let's buzz through these 4 deep album tracks, and maybe we could just talk about them a little bit as a whole. So Kevin Richardson does contribute to songwriting on track 9, which is Back to Your Heart.
Who's the guy with the mustache?
Right. Yes. As determined.
Yeah,
as
Kevin.
Determined.
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah.
The words to say
Kevin always did the least amount of singing. However, comes in off the friggin' top rope for the mother effing win on Now I Can See That We're Falling. That's Kevin.
Yeah.
That's like Kevin's like career moment.
That's peak Kevin.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Apex Kevin. Because he's sort of just, blending in. But good to know they did little songwriting.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Quote unquote talent.
Quote unquote. Exactly. Continuing with the track 10, Spanish Eyes.
Knowing all I have to do is reach out my hand to you. Anytime I want to look into your Spanish.
It's just so bad.
It's so bad. I love how they got out the fake electronic clavicles for the Spanish song.
Right. Yeah. There's
for the song about Spanish.
Definitely some appropriation going on.
Click.
Exactly.
So unnecessary.
Right. Exactly. Second to last track, number 11, is No One Else Comes Close.
Girl, with just a touch, you can do so much. No one else comes close.
Yeah, they should have passed this one off to Nick Lachey or something,
Nick Lachey is way cooler than No One Else Comes Close.
They passed on that.
Maybe Celine Dion. Hey, there's number 4. Reference number 4.
There you go.
Lastly is The Perfect Fan.
Blessing me with family who did all they could. And I've had many years of grace. And it flatters me when I see a smile on your face.
All right, who wrote this song?
I want to thank you for what
This one was Thomas Smith and Brian Luttrell.
Who needs to go to jail for writing
Right.
in hopes I can get back to you.
this? Who's singing?
Be the
It's got to be Brian because he
No,
co-wrote
it's not
this.
Brian. I think that's AJ.
I was young, just
I hear Brian in the chorus for sure, but yeah, the verses.
Yeah.
You never really know.
I think they threw one of the other guys a bone.
Could be one of the producers too. Team, maybe the
Just
worst.
some guy off the street,
Right, right.
Who knows?
Maybe the worst 4-song run in Two Twins in album history.
That's a bad 4-song run. So obviously, Don't Want to Lose You Now in the one, I think are outstanding. And then boy, it just
It
dies.
falls off a cliff. It just
Yeah, I
completely
mean,
does. Yeah.
How about we just end it at the one and call it an EP?
It still would have been a full length, just a really short one, I guess. But that concludes Millennium. And so, T, we need to examine this piece and talk about, did it hold up? What do you think?
Well, kind of. I think it's a unique genre in that I think for at least the next couple of decades, you'll always be able to pop that in and somebody will acknowledge the fact that either they themselves or their parents or, whatever, remember that time. I mean, it's a bit of a nostalgia piece and certainly a sign of the times type of, musical experience, more so than it is anything that's going to be deemed classic anytime soon or I think is going to hold a lot of musical merit. So in terms of, again, the imagery and of course the record, important of its time and cool to revisit and at some points giggle about and all that. But I don't know that it's like music that's going to have a critical place, but it probably to an extent will have a forever place. I mean, I'm sure 50 years from now, I Want It That Way, I'll still be in the rotation somewhere and maybe still being karaoke to your point. So, there are probably elements of this that go on for a while and it'll just be interesting to see how the young, I don't know if you're almost teenage girls have listened to any of this stuff or like it, or if at this point it just sounds old and it's a bunch of guys that are now old so they don't care. But it'll be kind of interesting to see, how that a generation from now, if any of these songs are still around. I think I Want It That Way has a chance. For the rest of it, it's a definitely an interesting listen until you get to the last 4. And something I would continue to listen to every so often. But again, I lived through it. So it'll be interesting to see if generations that didn't live through the height of it still either respect or enjoy it, as a musical experience. Since the videos and the imagery and those things probably aren't really a factor. So time will tell.
I don't know if you remember, but during the pandemic, do you remember as a family, we were doing like these challenges where we'd put together a video and get on Zoom all together. And we did like skits and we did dances and lip sync stuff. And we get on Zoom and the kids would do their thing. Do you remember when we did all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if you recall, but one of them was a lip sync.
Mhm.
And our girls at the time, they would have been 8, 9, 10-ish years old. They did Backstreet Boys Larger Than Life.
Mhm.
And that's because, my wife had introduced them to this music and they really liked it. And so there was totally their choice. And they both, put on their outfits and they lip synced through Larger Than Life.
Yeah.
It was really cute. And I do remember thinking, wow, maybe this means that this music is going to resonate with the new generation. I do think time will tell a little bit as to the level of that, but there's just so much more content now for kids to get into that I don't think reaching back to a 1999 group will fill their cup as much as Sabrina Carpenter and kind of all the people now that are doing this.
Yeah.
I think select songs may last. I agree. I Want It That Way is probably the leading candidate, but I think it holds up in moments, select moments, Larger Than Life. Yes. I Want It That Way, yes. But overall, as a thing, I don't think it will, just because there's just too much out there now. This still was a time where there weren't, think about it. You go to YouTube, endless miles of music. That's not how it was in 1999. You had to seek it, you had to buy it, you had to purchase it, you had to listen to it on a physical format. So I think that has a lot more to do with why, it won't hold up than anything else.
Well, and a lot of things were different. MTV and there were a lot of things that were different than they are now, but there's a lot that remains the same. Listen, there's a reason why Taylor Swift, who I think's a dumbass, and I don't get the whole thing, but there's a reason why Taylor Swift won't go out in public without her caked on red lipstick and herself all made up, because her image is tremendously important. And that was the same in a lot of ways for this. So musically, a lot of this stuff is secondary to the image. And that was kind of the case with this whole scene. And it's still the case today. If Taylor Swift walked out with no makeup on and a ball cap, people would think differently of her. And that's kind of weird and gross, but it's the way to an extent that it's always been. So yeah,
of course she needs the cameras on her when she walks into Arrowhead Stadium, right? Yeah,
that's right.
To show this image, to support what you're saying, for sure.
Right. So it's almost. In some ways, it's almost gotten worse. Like, this was kind of just fun and lively. Now, people are obsessed with cosmetics and image, and it is encouraging, I would say, that 25 years later, that we're still doing an episode on this and people are still listening to these songs and people are still enjoying this. These guys are still touring and they're still selling out. They had a Vegas run. So,
they just announced a long run at the Sphere. They're the next band that's going to play at the Sphere.
Yeah. So, this is not something that is completely faded away. And these guys are older. They still dress up and they still do their thing, but the bottom line is that I don't think it would still live on the way it has today when these guys are in their 50s if the songs weren't great. And that's what's going to be interesting about a lot of the stuff happening now that is so incredibly image dependent is, are these songs going to matter 25 years from now? And I'm kind of glad that there are a few, at least for these guys, that certainly have and have continued to lead to these guys performing and being successful. I think the whole thing's great.
All right, see, let's give Millennium the final word. So you tell me, is Backstreet Boys Millennium on the turntable? Is it in the collection? Is it collecting dust? Or is it in the for sale bin? Where do you got it, T?
So I got to tell you really quick, I just rearranged my records the other day and I actually carved out a new section, which is albums we've done an episode for. So
Oh, cool.
there's like a two twins in an album little subsection in my
I love it. I love it. Very nice.
otherwise autobiographical arranged
Yeah.
records.
No fucking way.
Yeah. Thank you. It's collecting dust. I don't think you can put it for sale. There's just too many great moments, but you know, man, you can't really, I don't think you need to have this in your record collection. I mean, I think you can get these songs out in other ways. So I'm going to go collecting dust. There's a handful of really, really high points. And then God, the last 4 songs of the album, it just like literally dies, like just falls flat on its face. So I don't think you can go any higher than that with a straight face, but also I don't think you can take it to the for sale bin because it really is the quintessential record for a genre that, you know, not only meant a lot at the time, but has kind of lived on with these same guys doing these same songs today. So I got it collecting dust. How about you, man?
Got it to the for sale bin because I think the ultimate Backstreet Boys collection, and I rarely say this, is their hits. Mostly because it has Drowning, which is their best song.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Drowning wasn't on an album. If Drowning would have been on Black and Blue, I would have that album in the collection because I think it's a more mature kind of next step. It's got Shape of My Heart, which I think is fantastic. And Drowning, I think it's just a legitimately outstanding song. But this album, it's too laughable, especially in the last, few songs. It's hard to take seriously. And that's why I would move it to the for sale bin. But the singles and the high points are very, very, very strong and do hold up really well. But as a collective, and as our job to analyze the album, there's just too many moments to not be taken seriously, for sure.
Very fair.
What I do take seriously is taking us home with a little bit of Dolores. All right, revisit with Dolores and figure out what is in your head. T, what do you got?
Dolores lives. She lives.
She lives. She's back. T, what's in your head?
Song from the 80s. We're doing pop. Let's stick with pop. It's Catch Me I'm Falling by Pretty Poison. Do you know that song?
Great song. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Catch me now I'm falling.
What a great intro. Listen to this intro. How good is that? And then it goes into this just just this great freaking track.
I'd love to know the rest of that album if it's any good.
Pretty Poison? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm sure I'll buy it at some point.
I don't even know if it was a band. Who knows? Probably some producer, and he just call me Pretty Poison and put this song out. There's a song by Jet called Lazy Gun. Jet is a great band, and they have a new album coming out this year, which is fantastic because they've taken a little hiatus. Big Jet fan. And lastly, I'm going to go with Kenny Hickey's group. That's the typo negative guy, called IAM is the group. And this song is called Cryptomnesia. Cryptomnesia, I think is how you say it. But a couple good tracks that Kenny and Johnny Cully have put out with a couple other guys under the name of IAM. And by the way, I'm hearing rumblings of a typo negative tour with like a tribute kind of thing with the guys in the band, but then somebody else doing the vocals.
Yeah, boy, would that would be so cool.
As long as they do it right, it would be incredible. I would love to support that, obviously, and see the other guys in the band, and if they could get the right vocal approach and vocal participation, that could be very cool. So anyway, hopefully more to come on that. But that's what is in my head. What is in your head?
Stayed in our little era that we explored today with a little Avril Lavigne, I'm With You, which I think is a beautiful song, as many of hers were. Nickelback, Something in Your Mouth, like kind of overheard that the other day. Such a jam. Like, do-do-do-do-do. Like, what a just killer riff. And then I recently picked
You want to analyze the lyrics of that one? Or
Yeah, right, yeah. And then I recently, I got a vinyl box set from the Human League with 5 of their albums reissued, and forgot just how good of a song Mirror Man is off of Dare.
Can I tell you a song that I can't stand?
Sure.
Like to the point where it comes on, and I don't know why Human League just reminded me of this song because Human League is on the 80s channel a lot, and then this song comes on the song by the Cars, Drive. Who's gonna take you home?
Terrible song.
Dude, that song starts with that just dum, dum, dum. And I swear to God, I can't, if I don't turn the radio off in 5 seconds, I'll like, you need to put me in a straitjacket.
Yeah, I put that in like the Lady in Red category. Like, it's just like,
dude,
I
wait
don't
a
want to hear
minute.
it.
Wait,
Or I've had the time of my life. Like, I cannot hear this.
Yeah, that one kind of sucks. Dude, Lady in Red's great.
Well, dude, listen, I love Krista Berg. Like, he's a very underrated, but
Let me ask you a question. When's the last time you just actually like listened to the Lady in Red start to finish?
Pretty regularly, because I have the album that it's on, and it's a terrific album. I mean, Krista Berg is a fantastic artist.
The
song just gives me the cringe.
I love Lady in Red. Okay, but fair enough. But oh my God, I've been meaning to mention that on here. Like,
yeah, Drive is bad.
If we did like bottom 5 songs of all time, that Drive would be on there.
Hey, I like that idea for a future pod. You know, how about next time we do one of our like just conversational ones, you know, or anniversary ones? Let's do that, man. Bottom 5 songs.
We are due for album of the year,
yes,
2024, and we got some Q&A, and yeah, doing like 10 worst songs or most hated songs, that would be fun. So yeah,
let's do that next.
When we reconvene in December, we'll make that happen.
Oh, stop it. Yeah, we'll do that next. That sounds like a great plan. All right, T. Well, it was nice to go back to the year 1999 with you, and hey, hopefully this Y2K thing doesn't end the world. You know?
Yeah.
Let's hope everything works out.
Let's you know what? Let's just go to Windsor and bring in the new year and get so hammered that we wouldn't even notice if the
wouldn't even
ended.
care.
That's what we were doing. I know
exactly. So we've already teased out the next show, so we'll check in with you again real soon with some other interesting updates and things like that. And I'm sure T will bring us a marvelous album to analyze on a very soon edition. So thank you so much for tuning in. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And we'll see you next time on Two Twins and an Album.
Two twins.
Well, that's about it. That's all we have. I hope it wasn't too disappointing. We will see you on tour. Until then, take it easy.